Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. So, last session we read the hadith that talk about ما يقربني من الجنة ويبعدني عن النار, what would bring me closer to Jannah and distance me from the fire of hell. And there were different narrations and we went through them. We went through all of them except the last one actually. It was actually Ibn Umar was asked a question by a man. He said to Abdullah ibn Umar, the son of Umar ibn Khattab, he said to him, why don't you go out for fighting for the sake of Allah? ألا تغزو? Ibn Umar was a very dedicated worshipper. He used to fast a lot and pray a lot and do Hajj and Umrah and so on. And he never participated in any of the turmoil that happened between the Muslims. And he didn't even, after the death of Prophet ﷺ, he didn't go out for many of the battles that were far distant from Medina. He stayed there. So a man basically, as if he's asking him, as if he's blaming him and trying to find out, why don't you go out for fighting for the sake of Allah? Ibn Umar responded, he says, إني سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إن الإسلام بني على خمس شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وصيام رمضان وحج البيت. He says, I have heard the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم say that Islam is based on 5 things. The testimony of faith, which is the belief, to testify that there's none worthy of worship except Allah and that Muhammad ﷺ is his messenger, to perfect your salah, to pay your zakah, the charity, obligatory charity, to fast Ramadan, and to perform Hajj. So again, basically what he's telling the man is that I try to do what is obligatory on me, what is compulsory, and I do not see that going to fight at the outskirts of the Muslim country at the time, or nation, or empire, is obligatory on a Muslim. If somebody wanted to do it to gain thawab, gain reward from Allah, that's good and well. But you don't have to impose it on every Muslim, or feel that the Muslim is not a good Muslim if he's not doing that. You follow? That's what he was trying to tell him. And that is why some scholars said that after the conquest of Mecca and the stability of the Muslim country, and there was no imminent danger on the Muslim empire at the time, jihad, fighting for the sake of Allah, became fard kifayah. It is not obligatory on each individual, but on the community if there's a need in general. Unless, of course, there's imminent danger or Muslims are invaded, then it becomes an obligation on people in that locality that is invaded. And if they are not enough, then the people who are beyond them and beyond them and beyond them, until that need is satisfied. The need for defense is satisfied. This is how it goes. You follow? And then in some narrations he says, وَإِنَّ الْجِهَادَ مِنَ الْعَمَلِ الْحَسَنِ. He said to him, and jihad, fighting for the sake of Allah, is something that's very virtuous. But if something is virtuous, you cannot blame somebody for not doing it. You can't come and say to somebody, oh, why don't you sit after salah and make azkar? He can do it, or he may not do it. He may do it walking. You follow? Somebody sits, for instance, after Fajr till sunrise. Something very nice and very important. But if people don't do it, you don't go and ask them why you're not doing that. You follow? But yes, if somebody abandons Salat al-Jum'ah or doesn't pray or something, or doesn't fast Ramadan, yes, you go and tell them, why are you not fasting Ramadan? It's Bunya Islam al-Khams. This is the basis of Islam. You cannot abandon something like that. Now, another narration that we didn't come to, yesterday we were talking about the narrations that talk about دلني على عمل يقربني من الجنة ويبعدني من النار. But the ones I'm talking about today, actually Imam Muslim put them under a different title, بيان أركان الإسلام ودعائمه العظام. He says this chapter talks about the pillars of Islam, the foundation of Islam, and the most important tenets of Islam, دعائمه العظام. And he mentioned this hadith of Ibn Umar. In another narration he says بني الإسلام على خمس على أن يوحد الله. There he says شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله. Here he says يوحد الله, means to it's based on the oneness of Allah, to declare the oneness of Allah. Different wording, but each wording has its connotations that we have to know. على أن يوحد الله. In another narration he says بني الإسلام على خمس, also Ibn Umar. But why is the wording different? It's based on what the people who learn from Ibn Umar, what he said. Basically it could be Ibn Umar, his wording was different when he narrated to different people, or different people when they heard from Ibn Umar they expressed it differently. But as you can see, the meaning is definitely not changed. In one of them على شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله, that is tawheed, that is declaring the unity of Allah. على أن يوحد الله. In a third narration بني الإسلام على خمس على أن يعبد الله ويكفر بما دونه وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وحج البيت وصوم رمضان. على أن يعبد الله, that only Allah deserves to be worshipped, and everything else has to be shunned. All other false deities have to be abandoned and shunned. Nobody would pay attention or respect any deity but Allah Azza wa Jal. Again, it is the same meaning but expressed differently. What is shahada? What is the meaning of shahada? Shahada is not a word, obviously. You can see here it says it means to actually worship Allah only and not and abandon all the false deities that they used to worship. In one of the narrations, the order of the items was بني الإسلام على خمس, and it is mentioned وصيام رمضان والحج. He says وصيام رمضان والحج, to fast Ramadan and then perform Hajj. This is what Ibn Umar said. Another man tried to correct Ibn Umar. He said to him الحج وصيام رمضان. What did he do here? He just changed the order. Changed the sequence, exactly. فقال Ibn Umar, he corrected him. He says no, لا صيام رمضان والحج سمعته من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Which means they were very diligent and very particular even about the order of how they heard things. It would not make a single difference if you said Hajj before Siyam Ramadan. But here he says no, Siyam Ramadan wal Hajj, and because this is how he heard it, and this is a logical sequence as well, because for more than one reason. Siyam comes every year. Hajj, if you perform it once in a lifetime, it's sufficient.
Yeah, and if you have the capacity to
exactly. If it needs a lot of capacity to do it. Some people might never perform Hajj. Also, because Siyam was made obligatory on Muslims very early on, maybe in the second year after Hijrah, while Hajj was later, like 5th or 6th year after Hijrah. Okay, so it is سنة السادسة وقيل سنة السابعة, 6th or 7th even, 6th or 7th. But Ramadan in the second year of Hijrah. So even chronological, it makes sense. So basically these are the ahadith that fall under the basic tenets of Islam and its foundation. Let me finish with this part because this will be a shorter class, because there's something very nice that he mentioned here. Sheikh Shabir Ahmad Al-Uthmani, he says, I'll just read to you because I can't express it. He expressed it very nicely. I'll read it in Arabic, I'll translate. He says, قال العبد الضعيف عفى الله عنه. And look at the humbleness. He says, قال العبد الضعيف. He says, this humble and weak slave of Allah is saying, talk about himself, and he's a scholar, but look at how he's talking. He says, may Allah forgive him. He said that. He says, قال العبد الضعيف عفى الله عنه. The humble slave of Allah, may Allah forgive him, has said, إن الصوم والحج عند المحققين كأمثال شيخ شيخنا نور الله نور الله مرقده عبادتان جماليتان نشأتا من صفة الجمال لله سبحانه وتعالى، كما أن الصلاة والزكاة من مقتضيات صفة الحكومة، وهذا ظاهر جدا لمن تدبر في الأفعال. He says Hajj and fasting are kinds of acts of worship that are related to the beauty of Allah Azza wa Jal. And he's going to explain that. Actually, I've never read this anywhere else, and I felt it was very nice. I wanted to share it with you. He says these two acts of worship are related to the beauty of Allah. How did he come up with that? He says وبالجملة فمن أحب شخصا في الدنيا وتعشق جماله وتجرع من كأس الهوى فأولى مرحلة يقطعها من مراحل العشق هو التبري والمجانبة وتفريغ القلب عن سائر ما سوى المحبوب من الآباء والأبناء والأزواج والعشائر والأموال المقترفة والمساكن المرضية وأسباب الزينة ومكاسب العيش وغيرها، واتخاذ كل ذلك وراءه ظهريا، ثم الاستغراق في تصور المحبوب والذهاب إلى دياره في هيئة رثة ساجعة والصياح باسمه مرة بعد مرة. He says if somebody loves some person in this life even, and extreme love and adoration, it would lead to that person forgetting about his own family, forgetting about his life, and forgetting everybody he loved before that. You see that happening. And when, for instance, a woman loves a man very much, and her father or whatever tells her, no, you cannot marry this man. Sometimes you can just, go and marry him despite everybody she loved in that family. She may abandon the whole family for that man. She may even leave the house for that man, correct? Because there's love that basically captivated her. He says, and the person, when he feels intense love, he would leave everything. He would leave his beautiful house. He would leave his family. He would leave the luxury life that he was living. He may live with that person he loves in a much poorer life than the life he is used to, correct? Just because he loves that person, correct? And he would go to him no matter how far he was, and he would yell and call out his name repeatedly, correct? These are signs of love. He says, look at this, he says, وَالْهَيَمَانْ فِي الْأَوْدِيَةِ وَالْجِبَالِ وَالصَّحَارِ. Some people who have intense love, they might even go crazy. And even in history, some people went crazy out of love. Do you know, there was a recent story on BBC about this Iranian man. قرأت عنه؟ ما قرأت عنه? There was this Iranian man, it was on BBC recently. He lived until he was 93. This man loved a woman in his 20s. I can get you the story. I just read it maybe a week ago. And he went to ask for her marriage. The family refused. He just went crazy. He left his job, left his family, he became homeless. He vowed not to take a bath from his 20s. he didn't take any bath. He lived in the caves. Wallahi. He ate. Yes, that's him. That's the story. That's Haji. He's called Haji something. What do you know his name? Haji. Get his name. Look up his name. لسه ميت قريبا. He just died recently. He vowed not to take a shower. He didn't take a shower until he died 93 years old. Did not wash himself. Lived in the streets. Even people felt sorry for him. They built him a small hut. He wouldn't stay in the hut. He would sleep outside. And he used to eat dead animals' carcasses. They actually labeled him the filthiest man on earth. أقذر رجل في العالم. Get me his name. أقذر رجل في العالم. أقذر. إيراني هذا هو. أقذر رجل في العالم. The filthiest man on earth. This story was just on BBC recently. They talk about the filthiest man, but the background story, I read it later on BBC. So he says, and that person would go out in the caves and the valleys and the mountains. Yeah, what's his name again? Haji what? His name is Haji something. He says, and that is basically Ammu Haji. Ammu Haji, No. So basically he says, and this is basically what a person does when they go for Hajj, for instance, showing the love. You leave the family, you leave everything, you leave your job, you leave your you expose yourself to danger because you're also traveling big distances, and there's lots of crowds, there's risk of disease, risk of infection, right? Risk of stampede, anything can happen, right? That's a sign of love. And so, of course, as well, he says the same thing with the fasting is that a person abandons what he loves the most. What do we love the most? Eating and drinking, the necessities of life, right? And also sleep, even, because in Ramadan you have to wake up, you change your sleep habits, you abandon some of your sleep, you abandon some of your food, you abandon some of your water, your drink, right? You abandon your desires. All this to show love for Allah Azza wa Jal. So, Ibn Umar, I just want to mention one more thing. When he was asked, why don't you go out for Hajj? A man said to him, ما حملك على أن تحج عاما وتعتمر عاما وتترك الجهاد. So this is how he used to live his life. He used to do Hajj 1 year, and the next year he would do Umrah. Hajj and Umrah. So the man maybe felt jealous or something. He says, why do you not go for jihad and you do Hajj and Umrah so much? Anyhow, so may Allah have mercy on all of us. Shall we stop here?